All right, CJ 1100 intro students, welcome back. This is a brief discussion about why people commit crime. Now, in our field, we have numerous explanations of why people commit crime. Some of these, or most of them probably, have come from sociology historically, but we also have psychology, biology, which deals with neurology, like the brain, genetics, and things like that, anthropology, business. There's lots of different fields that study crime and theories have been presented from all of them. So there's a link on your As You Learn page about different, it's a summary of different chronological theories. So I'm just going to go through these briefly with you, and I'll encourage you to take my theories of crime class in the future, where this is what we deal with for the whole semester. You can also take a criminology class in sociology, which would be very similar to this. So the classical school comes from the 1700s, and the idea is that you have rational actors. And rational actors basically are seeking pleasure. That's called hedonism. They're seeking pleasure and they want to avoid pain. So the way to prevent crime is to give offenders more pain than they get pleasure from their crime or gain from, property gain or what have you. This ultimately led to a group of theories, which is a little bit lower down in this handout online, about the rational choice theory. The idea that offenders are rational. And a lot of property crimes are very rational. Some of them are quite impulsive, but many, if not most, violent crimes are very impulsive. There's no rationality or thought put into it. As as an exception, you have these planned murders, right? Assassinations and things like that, or killing someone for money. Those are considered rational. But generally, murder and assault and things like that happen in the heat of the moment when someone confronts you. We're seeing this now in the coronavirus crisis where people are getting assaulted at work because they're demanding that others wear masks, and people lose their head and they commit an assault over this. Like, I know some of you might view wearing a mask as a major restriction of your freedom, but you wear a seatbelt in a car for safety, right? You wear a helmet on a bike for safety. Sort of the same idea. And the mask is not meant to protect you, it's meant to protect other people. People your age are likely to be carriers and show no symptoms. So you could pass it on to more vulnerable populations by coughing or sneezing in their presence. That's why you're asked to wear a mask. Okay, so I'm wearing one in public anyway. The positive school you'll see second comes from the 1800s, and both of these were developed in Europe, for example. And it just says, no, there is no free will. Crime is determined by factors beyond our control. Some of these are outside of you, and some of them are inside of you. So there's biological factors that cause you to commit crime, and there's sociological factors that cause you to commit crime. Many of you believe that already, and some of you probably don't. I personally don't believe our behavior is caused by these things. I believe that our behavior is made more or less likely by these things. Things that make crime more likely are called risk factors. Things that make crime less likely are called protective factors. And these generally are the opposite of each other. In other words, a risk factor would be something like bad parents. A protective factor would be good parents. A risk factor would be hanging out with deviant peers, criminal friends. A protective factor would be hanging out with law-abiding friends, conformists. Okay. Next in the chart is individual trait theories, and this is very similar. This is just that we can identify different traits or characteristics, personality traits, for example, that differentiate criminals and non-criminals, or people that commit a lot of crime versus people that only commit a little bit of crime. And there's a whole lot of these kinds of personality trait theories. They come from personality theory. They come from psychology. Okay. Now, the next few group of theories are all come from sociology. Social disorganization is responsible for the founding of American criminology. This theory was developed in the early 1900s in the city of Chicago. They found that some communities are just not organized. Some neighborhoods are just not organized to prevent crime, and there's certain conditions that are absent. So, like the main one is called collective efficacy, and that's the connection between people in a neighborhood. So when people in a neighborhood are connected, they're looking out for each other, they care about each other, that's a community. There's less crime there. But when environmental factors like a large number of single parent families, or high levels of poverty, or heterogeneous, very diverse population, these are things that interfere with cohesion, according to the research. And sure enough, street crime tends to cluster in these so-called socially disorganized neighborhoods. There's a lot of information about that theory online, by the way, if you're interested in it, including how it was developed, what they found, and everything else. Differential association, social learning theories are all the same. Basically, crime is learned. It's learned in interaction between intimate personal groups like friends and family. No question that's true. Children imitate their parents. Peers get reinforcement by doing things from their friends, right? People get reinforced for their behavior and they're likely to repeat it. Okay, so there's a lot of evidence that that is true as well. Anomie and institutional anomie theories blame crime on the American dream. Pursuing wealth puts you under stress. Some people do not have the legitimate or legal means to achieve wealth, so they have trouble getting into school or they can't get a job or what have you. They feel what's called strain. And strain is related to anomie. It's the next one in the chart. Basically, it's wanting the American dream, it's wanting the goals, it's wanting everything that you want in your life, but not being able to achieve it. You feel stressed. So some people become what's called innovators, and they commit more crime. They create illegitimate means, criminal means to achieve their wealth. They just don't give up. Okay. Institutional anomie theory says that there's an imbalance in our society between all of our institutions. So you look at what the president talks about all the time. For example, the economy. The economy, the economy, the economy, the economy. You look up institutional anomie theory and you'll see that the economy dominates our lives. And so families are put under stress, schools are put under stress, and ultimately we become really selfish and we fight about everything. Like there's no community good anymore. So I think this explains a little bit what's going on now with COVID-19. You have people assaulting each other as if we're not all in this together because we're under an enormous strain and stress to serve the economy, keep the economy going, serve the stock market, make money, etc. Okay. General strain theory is more general than that. It says that there are other stressors in your life besides financial that can lead to negative emotions, and those negative emotions lead to crime. Losing something of value, losing a loved one, losing a relationship, going through a stressful situation, being victimized, experiencing anything negative, being blocked from achieving any goals. Maybe you want to pass a class and you don't. Maybe you want to go on a date with someone and the person says no, whatever. These things are stressful, and if you have really strong negative emotions and you can't correct them through other ways, and if you view them as they're unjust, these are things that supposedly lead to crime. Okay. Social control theories, all of those they're listed together. Those say that you are basically born antisocial. You're born without knowing the rules, and you don't know how to abide by the law. You're selfish, and you're impulsive, so you think short term instead of long term. Social control theories say that you have to learn to be good, and you learn from key groups in society, like your family, like your friends, etc. So the social bonds are the things like being loved by your parents, being committed to school and work, being involved in extracurricular activities, believing in the law. These are things that make crime less likely, according to social control theory. Okay, routine activity theory is actually related to rational choice. It basically says crime can only occur in the presence of three things. You have to have a motivated offender, a suitable target, and a lack of capable guardians. This theory was developed in the late 60s when women were going to work. And so historically, women were in the household protecting the house, basically by being present. And all of a sudden, women started going to work. Well, now there's all these homes that are unoccupied. Well, burglars are rational. They don't like to go into homes that are occupied. If someone comes to your house when it's occupied, that's not a burglar, that's a robber. And they tend to be very violent and dangerous. Burglars are non-confrontational. They don't want to be seen. So motivated offenders found these targets more suitable, and there was no guardianship to protect them, hence more crime. Now, I did my master's thesis and doctoral dissertation on routine activity theory. So if you're interested, I can definitely tell you more about it. I studied burglary in Tallahassee, Florida for 6 years, and definitely supported the routine activity theory very well. Shaming is an interesting theory. It's the opposite of deterrence. Deterrence says that if you're punished, you become afraid of crime, and others are afraid of crime because you're like, so we execute someone, for example, it sends a message that this is what can happen to you. Labeling theory says that if you're labeled, it destroys you as a person. It destroys your self-image. You start to see yourself as a criminal, and therefore you become more criminal. You start to, it blocks off legitimate activities for opportunities for success, like work and school. So what option do you have other than crime? Think about businesses that don't want to hire convicted felons. That's the labeling theory. Okay. I mentioned critical theories in the last video. Peacemaking is a little bit out there, honestly, but you can look it up if you're interested. There's not a lot of it in our field. Same with the feminist theories are very important, but they're not widely taught. But they basically focus on gender and sexuality. The ones I find most interesting are the developmental life course theories and integrated theories. So, for example, I published a book called Why Crime. So it's third edition. So it's 3 different versions of the same theory. The theory says that you are an individual made up of organs and cells. You as an individual belong to different groups, which belong to different neighborhoods, communities, and organizations, bigger groups, which is part of a big society. All of these systems, cell, organ, organism, group, community, organization, society, all of these are living systems, and there's risk factors in each of them that make it more likely that you'll commit crime. There's also protective factors in them that make it less likely that you'll commit crime. So my theory says people commit crime if they have more risk factors than protective factors. And if those risk factors are strong, you're exposed to them early in your life, you're exposed to them for a long period of time, etc. So it's not causative. It's not determinism like the positive school of criminology. It's a risk factor approach, saying that crime's more likely under certain circumstances and less under others. Okay, that's a really quick, down and dirty introduction to these theories. If you're interested in them, please, if you have questions, let me know. You're going to have an assignment to tell me why you think people commit crime, and you're asked to justify that in writing. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys next week when we'll be talking about the next topic. Peace out. Be safe, please.